With SRN News, I'm Val Dior. Police in Sacramento are announcing the ID and capture of a man known as the Golden State Killer, who possibly committed at least 12 murders throughout the state in the 70s and 80s and possibly 51 sexual assaults over 10 years. He's ID'd as 72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo, who was fired from the Auburn Police Department. Ventura County District Attorney Greg Todd.
I'm very pleased to announce that this morning in Ventura County, we have filed capital murder charges against Mr. D'Angelo for the March 1980 murders of Lyman and Charlene Smith. Our complaint alleges 2 counts of first-degree murder with 3 special circumstances, namely multiple murders, murder during the commission of a rape, and murder during the commission of a burglary.
D'Angelo was fired from the Auburn Police Department back in 1979. A massive manhunt continues about 60 miles from Bangor, Maine, after police say a 29-year-old John Williams of Madison, Maine, is accused of killing a sheriff's deputy, stealing his police cruiser, and then robbing a convenience store.
There certainly is an ongoing public threat. He needs to be, he's considered armed and dangerous.
Maine State Police Deputy Chief John Cody confirming the death of Somerset County Corporal Sheriff Eugene Cole. Former President George H.W. Bush has been moved out of intensive care to Houston Hospital and into a regular patient room as he recovers from an infection that spread to his blood. He will be in the hospital, though, for the next several days, they say. The man accused of shooting 2 Dallas police officers, killing one, was detained at a Home Depot because he might have been stealing. According to police body cam footage, the 29-year-old pulled a weapon from his pocket as the officers attempted to take him into custody. He killed 27-year-old officer Rogelio Santander, Officer Crystal Almeida, and Home Depot employee Scott Painter, still in critical condition. The Trump administration is no longer describing Israel's West Bank as an occupied territory.
The State Department's annual human rights report does not include the term occupied territories from the sections covering Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza, which had been the standard for more than 20 years. Removal of the phrase has been championed by U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman. The change comes ahead of next month's expected move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Greg Clugston, SRN News.
Bavaria's conservative government ordering Christian crosses to be placed at the entrance of all state administrative buildings. The regional government says the crosses shouldn't be seen as religious symbols, but are meant to reflect the southern German state's cultural identity and Christian Western influence. The decree won't affect municipal or federal government buildings in Bavaria. Crosses are already compulsory in public schools and courtrooms there. For more details, srnnews.com. A panel is recommending tough new guidelines for NCAA basketball programs. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice heads up the Commission on College Basketball, taking a closer look at allegations of wrongdoing at several major NCAA programs.
Frankly, sometimes it was like watching a circular firing squad. Every issue, every problem was somebody else's fault.
The Commission on College Basketball has directed the NCAA to take control of the sport, calling for sweeping reforms to minimize one and done, permit players to return to school after going undrafted by the NBA, and to ban cheating coaches for life. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders arguing the Trump administration's travel ban is working and needed to continue to safeguard the nation. Arguments about the ban heard today at the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Anthony Kennedy both signaling support for Trump's travel policy in arguments today at the High Court. You're listening to SRN News.
From Keene, the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. Silver is trading at $16.54 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,320 per ounce. Zencash is trading at $35, and the average price of Bitcoin is $9,111. Antiwar.com reports South Korea has turned off its propaganda loudspeakers as a gesture of goodwill ahead of Friday's summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. This is the first time in over 2 years that South Korea has shut off the loudspeakers aimed at North Korea. South Korea's giant wall of speakers broadcast news reports boasting of their prosperity, aiming it at both North Korean border troops and villages near the border. They occasionally play music or radio dramas, though the main point is to demoralize the other side. A spokesman told reporters the move was intended to ease military tensions ahead of Friday's summit and also to set a new tone. South Korean officials would not say if the loudspeakers would remain off after the summit. The expectation, though, was that the summit will include more discussions of a peace treaty, formally ending the Korean War, which is still officially ongoing since 1950. If a peace deal happens, there would clearly be no need to broadcast such messages across the border any longer. North Korea has its own loudspeakers on the other side of the border, mostly broadcasting criticism of South Korea. North Korea has not commented on what will happen with their loudspeakers. Indeed, given how much North Korea has toned down all other rhetoric, it is unclear at this point what those speakers have even been broadcasting. For over 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals. Gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. They don't feed the banks. They're Bitcoin preferred and have removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit online at rrbi.co. UPI reports the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that foreign corporations cannot be sued in U.S. courts for violation of international law. The 5-4 ruling is a loss for about 6,000 foreign victims of terrorist attacks in Israel and Gaza who accused Jordan-based Arab Bank of using its New York branch to distribute millions of dollars to terrorists and their families. While many victims had wanted to sue the bank in U.S. court, the Supreme Court on Tuesday disagreed with the legality of the prospect. Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote in the court's lead opinion, "Courts are not well suited to make the required policy judgments that are implicated by corporate liability in cases like this one." Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing for the dissenting group, argued that the ruling let companies benefit from their corporate status without having to shoulder fundamental responsibilities. Zencash is the world's first private, distributed, and reliable platform for communications, transactions, and publishing. Zencash has the ability to use both transparent and shielded transactions, with shielded transactions using zero-knowledge proofs. Zencash features global governance with inclusive decision-making, reliable funding for continuous improvements, and documentation and wallets in many languages that are available for Linux, Mac, Windows, and Android devices. Learn more at zensystem.io. That's zensystem.io. Reuters reports monkeys lack standing to sue for copyright protection, and an animal rights group cannot act as legal guardians in such a matter, according to a U.S. appeals court ruling on Monday in a battle over ownership of a smiling selfie taken by an endangered macaw. The dispute stemmed from a famous image that Naruto, a rare crested macaw who lives in a nature reserve, snapped using a camera that British photographer David Slater left mounted and unattended during a 2011 trip. His grinning visage, which Slater published in a wildlife book, went viral and triggered the long-running legal battle over who had the copyright. The judges of the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals based in San Francisco said the panel held that the monkey lacks statutory standing because the Copyright Act does not expressly authorize animals to file copyright infringement suits. The court's opinion added that PETA was not a next friend of the monkey in a legal sense and failed to establish that it had a significant relationship with him. Jeff Kerr, general counsel for PETA, said in a statement, denying Naruto the right to sue under U.S. Copyright Act emphasizes that he is discriminated against simply because he's a non-human animal. PETA had argued that the monkey was the legal owner of all the photos he took, but a federal judge in San Francisco ruled in January 2016 that copyright laws do not apply to animals. Slater announced that he would donate 25% of future revenues from the photograph to charitable groups that protect Naruto and other members of his species in Indonesia. The case was brought in a U.S. court because Slater's book was available for sale in the United States. This has been FPP Radio News. Online at fppradio.com.
Support for this podcast and the following messages comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, proud to support the many Texas businesses who make safety their number one priority in the workplace. More information about safety-focused workers' comp available at WorksafeTexas.com.
Serial killings arrest. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP Newsman. A DNA match in the past 6 days tied a former police officer, Joseph James D'Angelo, to some of the crimes committed by a California serial killer behind at least 12 homicides throughout the state in the 1970s and 80s.
Yesterday, an arrest warrant was issued. A complaint was filed charging that individual with 2 counts of murder with special circumstances for the murder of Brian and Katie Maggiore here in Sacramento in February 1978.
And one woman sexually assaulted in 1976 says she is overjoyed and ecstatic. Chances are President Trump's travel ban may withstand a Supreme Court challenge. During questions today, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Anthony Kennedy both seem to side with the ban. The court will issue its ruling in late June. I'm Tim McGuire.
Major art theft in Boston overnight. 2 thieves posing as police officers overpowered museum guards.
Very dramatically said, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery."
A part of our heritage has been stolen.
This horrible thing occurred in 1990. Everything changed because of that.
Someone on the inside helped the thieves.
From the guys who brought you Missing Maura Murray and Crawl Space.
Empty Frames will be available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts on February 6th.
From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Karen Howerlock. And we begin in Toronto, where we are learning more about 2 of the victims killed in Monday's van attack on Yonge Street. 10 people died. Ron Charles reports.
Single mother Renuka Amarasinga had just finished her first shift as a high school cafeteria worker when she was hit and killed in Monday's van attack. Rangika Karunathalake was a close friend.
She always told me every time when I met her, my only dream is, I want to live until my son finishes studies.
Dorothy Sewell, a hockey-loving 80-year-old retired Sears worker, also died, as did Munir Najjar, a Jordanian citizen in his 80s who had traveled to Canada to visit his son. Chu Min Eddie Kang, a chef at a Brazilian steakhouse, was also killed. Investment company worker Anne-Marie D'Amico was the first victim named yesterday, similar to the others so far by family or colleagues. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
And we have learned the name of one more victim this evening. A woman who lives at a Toronto community housing complex says her longtime neighbor, Betty Forsyth, was killed in Monday's attack. She was 84. Well, tempers are rising in Alberta.
I'm not a big fan of this decision.
Premier Rachel Notley pushes back against a decision by the University of Alberta to give environmentalist and CBC broadcaster David Suzuki an honorary degree. Suzuki already has 29 of them. Rafi Boudjoukanyan has more.
If they'd like to stick to their guns and confer the honorary degree, so be it. On the other side, we're under no obligation to fund that university through our donations.
Greg Gartner says his law firm is holding back $300,000 it intended to donate to the University of Alberta. Gartner represents clients in Alberta's energy industry. Environmentalist David Suzuki has targeted the province's oil sands for years. 2 University of Alberta faculties are also upset about the institution's decision to confer him an honorary degree. The Dean of the Faculty of Engineering did not go so far as naming Suzuki, but called the idea of honoring him the worst crisis the university's faced in 3 decades. The university says it's going through with its plans. Rafi Boudjoukanyan, CBC News, Edmonton.
The Saskatchewan government is asking the province's appeal court to rule if the federal government has the power to impose a carbon tax. Ottawa plans to bring in a carbon price for provinces that don't have one, but Premier Scott Moe's government wants to know whether that violates the Constitution. The province is fighting against the tax, saying its own climate change plans are enough to reduce emissions. Well, to California now, and the case of the notorious Golden State Killer.
We found the needle in the haystack, and it was right here in Sacramento.
Authorities have announced an arrest in a cold case going back 40 years thanks to advances in DNA technology. 72-year-old James D'Angelo, a former police officer, is in custody. Sacramento County District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert.
There were upwards of 50 rapes, 12 murders, crimes that spanned 10 years across at least 10 different counties, northern, central, and southern California.
D'Angelo is facing 4 murder charges, and more charges are pending.
His Excellency Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron got a warm welcome from U.S. lawmakers today. Macron addressed Congress about the historic ties between France and the U.S. and some disagreements over trade.
I believe facing these challenges requires the opposite of massive deregulation and extreme nationalism. Commercial war is not the proper answer to these evolutions.
Macron also talked about the need for the Paris Climate Accord and says France will not abandon the international nuclear agreement it signed with Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to pull out of the deal. He says he will make that decision in May. And that is your world this hour. You can also listen to us live on your mobile device using the CBC Radio app. For CBC News, I'm Karen Howerluck.
I'm Dan Rather, and I recently sat down with Robert Patterson, head of the DEA, to discuss the nation's drug epidemic. In my special report podcast, we cover the alarming statistics about prescription drug misuse and rising overdoses in America. Find out how you can make a difference this Saturday during DEA's National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day from 10 a.m. till 2. Tune in to radio.com for my special report, and to participate this Saturday, visit DEATakeback.com.
This is Jim Rome with the CBS Sports Minute. Huge day for Derek Jeter and the Miami Marlins. Cameron Maybin drove the go-ahead run in the top of the ninth, and they beat the Dodgers to snap their 5-game losing streak. So, now everything's coming up Jeter, right? Wrong. And worst of all was that sit-down interview he had with Brian Gumbel on Real Sports. Gumbel tried to talk to Jeter about his gutting that team, but Jeets was not having any of it. Did he really just go with a, quote, mentally weak blast? That could not have gone any worse for Jeter. I mean, look at him. It's like he's digging in against Mariano Rivera and that cutter for the first time ever and has no idea what to do with it. The only thing worse than tanking and being 6-17 is not tanking and being 6-17. So if you weren't tanking before, I would start claiming that you're tanking right now. I'm Jim Rome.
CBS Sports Radio.
This is Boomer Esiason with the CBS Sports Minute, brought to you by Cintas, a trusted partner of businesses everywhere. Cintas, ready for the workday. 4 years ago today, the Phillie Fanatic debuted at Veterans Stadium. The Phillies had been represented by the colonial-era costume siblings, Philadelphia Phil and Philadelphia Phyllis. However, the arrival of the San Diego Chicken sparked, if you will, a revolution of sort in the mascot world. Team executive Bill Giles called Muppet Master Jim Henson for advice. He, in turn, recommended the folks who created the Big Bird character, Bonnie Erickson and Wade Harrison. They offered Giles the design, costume, and copyright ownership of the Fanatic for $5,200. Giles instead bought only the costume for $3,900. Oops. 5 years later, it cost the franchise $250,000 to purchase the copyright ownership. I'm Boomer Esiason.
This is John Feinstein with a CBS Sports Minute, brought to you by Amazon Music. Washington hockey fans can be forgiven right now if they decide to hide under a couch for the next 2 weeks. Their Capitals are about to face the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Pittsburgh Penguins again. The last 2 seasons en route to the Cup, the Penguins have eliminated the Caps. There's more. The Penguins have won 5 Cups, each time beating the Caps along the way. In all, the teams have met in 10 playoff series, Pittsburgh winning 9. The Caps' only win came in the first round in 1994. The teams have met 3 times in the Crosby-Ovechkin era. The first time was in 2009 when Ovechkin was robbed by Marc-Andre Fleury on a breakaway 3 minutes into Game 7. Crosby scored soon after, and the Penguins went on to win the Cup. The Caps are still trying to get past round 2. Worth remembering, Yankees-Red Sox 2004. The nail can become the hammer. Maybe. I'm John Feinstein.
CBS Sports Radio.
This is Brandon Tierney with the CBS Sports Minute, brought to you by National Association of Realtors. So you're in the market for a quarterback this draft, huh? Well, lucky for you, there's plenty of options with as many as 6 expected to go in the first round. The rush is on, which means so are the smoke screens and dissecting all the players. Some love Josh Allen, some are terrified of Josh Allen. Some view Josh Rosen as the next Aaron Rodgers, some wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Same with Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. Undoubtedly talented, but enough flaws or red flags to give personnel people real pause, which brings me to Sam Darnold. While Darnold's getting the least shade for the most part, he's probably also getting the least amount of shine. And the reason? Ball security issues at USC. If you believe you can fix that, there's no doubt Darnold's the guy. Again, spin the wheel. Nobody really knows, despite how much they tell you that they actually do know. I'm BT.
This is Jim Rome with the CBS Sports Minute. We're just 24 hours from draft day, and if you think you're over the process, imagine if you're one of the guys who's right in the middle of the process. Take Josh Rosen. Pretty much nobody's been under the microscope longer, and nobody is more prepared to move on and play some football. Yesterday, talking to Andrew Siciliano on the NFL Network, Rosen gave one of the all-time answers to a question that everybody has been asking for about a year now.
I'm going to put absolutely every ounce and second of my time into ensuring that I succeed in the NFL. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that I'm going to be the last quarterback in this draft class standing when all is said and done, years down the road.
Straight freaking fire. I'm always ready for the draft, but never more so than this year. I'm Jim Rome.